behind you, Trev?
This one here.
Yeah.
That's called a Bond Electroglide.
Wow. Definitely looks Bond.
Yeah.
What's the deal with that?
It's from the early 80s. It was designed by a guy in the UK called Andrew Bond. I first saw it when I was in Australia in 1982. They were launching it there. And it's kind of like the answer to the question nobody ever asked.
Okay.
Which our industry is full of, as you know.
Yeah.
But it has a very interesting fingerboard. The fingerboard is actually a machined phenolic, and it's actually in steps, like a shallow staircase.
Oh, wow.
So there's no frets as such. There's just this step, and it's an incredibly fast fingerboard to play, and it's like lots of things. The whole guitar was a concept which was way too much. Like if you look at the controls, there's 3 rocker switches on there that do volume, treble, and bass. They work through solenoids and a transformer, and they scroll through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Which wow. I don't know one guitar player that would ever ask for that, because you know as well as I do that it's on with the volume, off with the volume. Yeah. Yes, you've got to watch a window in the guitar that's got LED readouts. And it scrolls. It's just
super over engineered.
And then it's carbon graphite and it's matte black, which today is popular, but in those days it wasn't. And there's just too much. It's just asking the guitar player to accept too much. But if they'd have just taken the fingerboard and put it on a strap neck, it would have been a success.
Interesting. Okay.
So it's one of my collection. A lot of my collection is what not to do.
Perfect.
How's it sound?
But maybe the fingerboard.
Does it sound all right?
Yeah, it sounds okay. It's just there's no. Yeah, it sounds fine.
That's cool.
Whatever.
Well, we're doing a part 2. Unfortunately, we had a technical issue, but I hope everybody's well. We are here with Trev Wilkinson of Awesome Wilkinson Parts and Hardware for Guitars and all kinds of instruments. And sorry about that, but how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, we're all bearing up.
Yeah, all here too. Dave, your background.
All good here.
Your background's kind of blurred. You've got that Skype blurred background.
Okay, well that's fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
I don't know how that happened, but okay. There's a switch, but I don't even know how to change it now, so who cares?
Yeah, all right. So, Trev, you're in the UK, like we were saying before, and close to Liverpool, you said, and that's a place I've always wanted to come visit. So, one day, hopefully, when we're allowed out of our houses. So, Trev, tell us, how'd you get into doing this stuff? I'm really, curious how the business started. How'd you get into guitar parts, and take us back, because I'm curious.
Way back. I played guitar when I was a kid. Always messed about with guitars. Built my first guitar when I was at art college in the mid-60s. Made a fluorescent orange plexiglass Telecaster.
Oh, wow.
Out of bits and pieces and things that I'd made. Huh. And then I came out of art college, graduated as a graphic designer, and did that for a little while, and then ended up going into the car business, buying and selling cars. And at that time, I was learning how to paint cars. So consequently, because you can paint a car, people would say to you, "Can you paint my guitar for me?" And of course, you'd go, "Yeah, sure, I'll do that." So I was, painting guitars for guys, 61 Strats and things with snakeskin finishes. That's what you do. And then, of course, you've got to pull it apart. And then when you've pulled it apart, you've got to put it back together again. And so it kind of gets you into guitar building and understanding the way guitars work. And then in 1982, I was actually living in Australia. I got pretty tired of doing cars. I've been doing cars for like nearly 15 years. So I thought I'll have a change and I will go into guitars full time. So I created a workshop in my home in Brisbane, Australia, and started to do guitar building, guitar repairs. And that was at the time when, I mean, literally again, you know, I was fitting non-fine tuning Floyd Roses to beautiful old Stratocasters and things, because in those days everybody wanted to be Eddie Van Halen, and to be Eddie Van Halen you didn't need talent, you needed a Floyd Rose. So I looked at this thing and I thought, okay, I see what Floyd's doing with this, and this is pre-fine tuning, don't forget, which is a whole different kettle of fish. And so I looked at it and I thought, okay, well, I can see what Floyd's doing and I understand it, but rather than stop the strings moving at the nut, why don't we allow them to move but control it? So that's when I came up with the concept of a needle bearing loaded small nut. Was only 3/16 of an inch wide, and literally would drop into a Strat nut route with a slight mod, and it worked. It worked. So in 1984, I got on an aeroplane and came to LA looking for a way to make and market this product, which ultimately a couple of years later turned into the Fender-Wilkinson roller nut, which was used on the Strat Plus for quite a few years.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to say, I didn't know that was you. Wow.
Yeah, it was the big nut, the one that you get on the Jeff Beck guitar. The one behind me there is the Jeff Beck guitar with the nut on the headstock. He still uses it to this day. So that was sort of like, that kind of got me into the industry. Once I was doing that, I was thinking, okay, well, what else can we build? Can we build a better bridge? Can we build a better bass bridge? What can we do? All the time, just trying to make life easier for the guitar player.
Right. That's awesome. Yeah, I remember when that nut came out.
Yeah. We were selling quite a lot. I think Fender were producing between 1,200 and 1,500 a month.
Wow.
Yeah, I totally remember that nut. Absolutely.
Get so many requests for it. It's still available, but I've licensed it to Goto. But there isn't a massive demand for it. But it's something that I keep thinking about. Should I reintroduce it? Because when the nuts are on eBay, they're like a fortune. They're kind of like $200, $250 when you find an original, you know.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah. Well, they were really cool. And then what was the next product that you came out with after that?
The first thing I did actually was a bass bridge. I designed a bass bridge, and I think I was probably the first guy to actually use aluminum on guitars at that time, apart from obviously the sandcast parts that get on the early Gibsons and things. But I felt it really helped a bass bridge because it transmitted more frequencies to the body than just at the time the Badass was going big and massive bridges made out of brass, which to me, we've all got our own opinions, we've all got our own ears, our taste in our ears, or sounds, but I thought it robbed frequencies. I don't think brass enhances anything, to be perfectly frank. So the whole brass mass thing was a bit strange to me. And it had side-to-side spacing, so you could do all the different interspacing between wide strings and thin strings. And again, that was quite successful. In those days, I really, really wish we had what we've got now, which is the internet. Because between me and the guitar player and the bass player were two levels of sales prevention, which seemed to be a distributor and a dealer. Because they wouldn't buy the product because the people weren't asking for it. But the people couldn't find out about it unless it was in a shop or on a guitar.
Right.
And that was kind of frustrating. So a lot of things kind of like weren't as successful as I think they could have been. But the most success I had obviously was with the Fender-Wilkinson roller nut, and also then the VS100 vibrato, which was the first serious vibrato that I did, which had the lockdown saddles and was a very, very stable piece. And it's still going well today. The sales of VS100s are phenomenal. So I'm really pleased about that. And then everything just became offshoots of those kind of products. Seeing a need in the market, designing it, making it, showing it to guitar players. If they bought it, they bought it. And ended up with quite a good OEM business. There was a lot of guitar companies buying Wilkinson hardware in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, I remember that. By the way, we got a super chat from Peter Urban. What's up, Peter? He says, Team Tone Talk, keep up the great work and stay healthy. And of course, this question is very close to my heart. He says, any chance the new Wilkinson bridge is coming out in Lefty for public purchase?
Everything hopefully is for public purchase in the end. It is. We've really, I presume he's talking about the new VS132P, which was launched on the John Suhr Pete Thorn model. That has been an incredible success for us. Those saddles I actually designed well over 25 years ago. But because Wilkinson really wasn't the guy that said you have to use a wrench, I was the guy that always said you don't need a wrench. I kind of put them on the shelf, and it wasn't until a conversation I had with John Suhr a few years ago now, where he was still saying, "Come on, Trev, you've got to have an answer. I'm still not quite there. I'm still not quite happy with the way even the best non-locking vibrato bridges are working, and I don't want to go to a double locking system." So I showed him the saddles, and he said, "I'd be very interested to try some." So I ended up making a set, and we put a bridge together. And I showed it to him, left him a couple of samples. He showed it to Pete Thorn. Pete put it on a guitar, went out there and basically did the shakedown test for about like 9 months on this thing, and just said, "Okay, so I have to use a little Allen wrench on one screw. I ain't going to worry about that. The tuning stability is so good in comparison to anything else. I'd like to run with it." So that started to take off. So we're playing catch up at the moment. Getting back to the question. Yes, there will be a left-handed version of it available. Don't forget that we do actually make saddles available as a set without a vibrato, and they have been designed to fit any vibrato that's ever been made since 1954. So if you've got a left-handed bridge, whether it's a 6-screw bridge on a Fender or an American Standard style of bridge or whatever it is, if you go and have a look at Wilkinson Direct on Reverb, you will see those saddle sets are for sale, and they will work on a left-handed bridge. So that will give you the basic concept. And if you've got a good return to zero with a 2-pivot bridge or whatever bridge you've got, then you can take advantage of that technology, for the want of a better word.
Yeah, that's great. And that's actually what I did. I ordered a set from you guys, from Kate, and I'm going to put it on my G&L. Great.
Yeah, it'll go on the G&L.
That's what I figured, and it'll be awesome. So yeah, Peter, you just get the saddles. We have another question from Ben Rossum. He says, please tell Trev, actually it's just a comment, please tell Trev that I really appreciate him and his wife. They shipped me 2 of the new locking tremolos direct in about 5 days to the USA from England. Great people they are.
Well, that's really good, but it's not my wife, it's my daughter. So I'm very flattered. She's very hurt.
Well, I don't know if you saw a picture, but okay. So that's too funny. That's funny because I didn't. Kate's your daughter?
Yes, she is.
I didn't know. You see, I had no idea.
She's been with me for like the last, I think 15, 16 years or something, maybe even longer. She's got rock and roll in her blood. I mean, I took her to the first NAMM show when she was like 5 years old in 1985. And she's been to NAMM shows ever since. And she just absolutely loves the industry. And I'm pleased to say the industry loves her. Yeah. And she does a phenomenal job. And she's a great people person. So the service from Kate is second to none.
Yeah, she's been a pleasure to communicate with. So I hope she's well, and her kids and everybody.
Yeah, they're fine. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's get back. So I remember then you started doing replacement bridges for, it was like the big thing on the gear page at one point was you got to get the replacement Wilkinson Telecaster bridge.
Oh yeah.
That was like a big seller for you too, right?
Yeah, it was, and still going well. We do 3 versions of it. I started with the 3-saddle bridge, which again is used on the John Suhr guitar, and some high dollar stuff because it is an expensive piece. But it's got the saddles on it. I always believed that a Telecaster gets part of its sound and tone transfer resonance transfer from having two strings hold one saddle still. In several interviews, people have heard me say I'm a firm believer that nothing should move underneath the string. If you're asking the string to stop something from moving or vibrating, you are then robbing that string of energy. And to my way of thinking, sustain comes from the amount of time a string can ring, can vibrate. Yes, we can get extra sustain from gains in amps. We can get powerful pickups overwound. But the reality of it is all those things can only sense what the string is doing to the guitar. So I've always been a firm believer that 3 saddles is the way to give somebody a Telecaster sound. I'm not saying it sounds better. I never get into the discussion of one thing sounding better than another. It's too subjective. It's too personal. But the reality of it is, if you're going to do something, then try and do it as right as possible. So I developed these saddles that actually swiveled in the center so that you could have 3 saddles on a Telecaster and get perfect intonation string to string by simply undoing the screw in the center of the saddle and twisting the saddle to bring like the E and the B and the G and the D and the E and the A in perfect tune to each other, which gives you spot on intonation. And that's been out with Goto for a long, long time. One of the first products I licensed to Goto. Then we did a simplified version of it for my manufacturing partner called Sungil in Korea, where we just offset the saddles, and it's a fixed intonation. With a standard string gauge, it's very, very close, and you can get a Telecaster bridge very, 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 very close with that. And then the third one that we've just launched with another manufacturing partner in Korea called Taesung is we've actually done one where, in fact, I'll try and show it if I can. I've got one here in front of me. I don't know whether it will show up on the camera. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Well, if we do that, you can see that all those 3 saddles have got offset intonation cuts.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Genius.
Now, some people have said to me, "Okay, we like that's great, Trev, but I'm using a hybrid gauge, or I'm mixing strings, I'm mixing different diameters, and the intonation travel is just that little bit too much." So again, I thought, "Oh, hang on a minute, we're actually only using one side of this barrel saddle. So if we were to take that saddle, and if we were to turn it over, which is hard to do when you're actually doing it in front of a camera, if we turn that saddle over." Now one side is a barrel and the other side is offset, so you've actually moved the intonation line half a saddle back. Mm-hmm. So I've got videos of guys with this bridge now on Telecasters showing perfect intonation across all 6 strings with those 3 saddles. So.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Yeah, that's great stuff. So how did you come up, like, what's your process when you're developing stuff like this? I mean, I'd really love to know, like, are you, and how's your background in terms of designing that stuff? You said you were a graphic designer before, right?
Yeah, that's what I left art school as. Only used it a little bit. I think so much of it is actually common sense, and looking at it from, I am a guitar player, but I am a bad guitar player. But I've done enough playing with bands on stage and things to know that I don't want to have to be worrying about what my equipment's doing, because I have enough trouble learning chords and lead solos and all that kind of stuff. So I figured that the guitar player's got a hard job, the hard enough job as it is on stage, without having to worry about whether his gear's working. So as you're playing guitar and you're learning about things and you're pulling guitars apart, you start to look at things, and it's just common sense that if that's not doing something, then why isn't it doing it? I mean, I have tremendous respect for Floyd. I mean, he looked at the problem and he solved it. He solved it very, very well. But to me, just that little bit too complicated. But he created a phenomenal thing. And I mean, the Floyd Rose became more than just a vibrato. The Floyd Rose became a style of playing.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of people made a lot of dollars on the back of that bridge. But there was always the other camp of people that actually didn't want to do that, and that's basically what we try and supply to people is the alternative way of doing things. Mm-hmm. And And listening, you can hear a guitar. You know, you still can't get to the bottom of why sometimes you build a guitar, you put a guitar together, and you may find this, Dave, with your guitars with Grover, building beautiful guitars, all the guitars are fabulous, but you get that occasional guitar that when you just play it and strum it, it just shouts at you.
Sure.
You know, and it's frustrating because you want to be able to do that all the time.
Right.
And it's not just CNC machines, and it's not just tone testing wood, and it's not just baking maple. It's not. There's something about something when it goes together, and an awful lot of that has to be the transmission of the vibration of the strings to the guitar. So I think hardware, kind of like sometimes I'd said to you previously, Mark, that hardware sometimes is the poor relative of a guitar. Not enough thought gets into putting what hardware should go on a guitar. There's too much thoughts about a nice flame maple top, or what's this or what's that. And the reality of it is nothing will work if the string cannot transmit its energy and tone to the instrument. And that's what hardware does. You can't build a guitar without guitar hardware.
Yeah, I mean, and hardware is super important. I mean, Dave, you talk about the hardware.
I'm picky about all that stuff, and you know, we've been talking a little bit about, you know, maybe eventually here implementing some of Trev's new bridge on some instruments. That hasn't happened yet, and right now, God, who knows when that's going to happen exactly. But
I can wait.
But you know, I think I would like to. I mean, I've used some of your products in the past. In fact, I have a guitar with a cutoff bridge that's one of your from some manufacturer.
Oh yeah, sure.
Off the compensated saddles, which I love. I actually have two guitars with that on it here.
Great, thank you.
And in the past, I remember first when the VS100 came out. It was a cool bridge. I don't know if I loved what it was made of, and then the second one I remember, but at the time I think it was called something different. Now it's called something different, but it was the same basic architecture, but with the bent metal saddles.
Yeah.
So it was like sort of like a VS100 bent metal saddles, but I think the bridge plate was different, wasn't it?
It was the same bridge plate as a VS100. I did that at the request of Jim Tyler.
Yes, that's where I got it from, and that's me. That sounded
Jim had said, Trevor, really like the VS100, the way it works, the way it stays in tune, but I'm missing that Strat sparkle, for the want of a better expression. Could you put? Sorry, I'm skipping ahead here. I'd already designed the bridge called a VSV, and that bridge was designed in answer to the guitar players that said, well, I want to put something on a vintage Strat, not a two-post Strat, a two-post pivot like an American Standard. And the VS100 works great, but again, I'm not hearing what I get out of a bent steel saddle.
Yeah.
So I looked at the bent steel saddle and went, okay, how can I achieve this tonality with bent steel, but yet give everybody the stability that you've already got with a VS100? So that's when I ended up designing the VSV. And then that was a 6-screw pivot, but the 6 holes were not all the same. One hole was a circle, which located the bridge from the side, and the other 5 holes were actually elongated slots. And that helped with the pivot return to zero. It's very, very difficult to get 6 screws in the right place in wood. You can drill the holes with a CNC machine and they can be perfectly spaced, but a screw by its very nature will decide how it's going to go in that wood. So you ended up getting, on vintage bridges, you ended up getting a couple of the screws slightly off the one side of the hole, and that now started the bridge to sort of like tip forward and stay there, or pull back and stay there. Didn't have a good return to zero. So again, thinking very simply and sensibly, okay, let's make 5 slots so that if the screw does go in slightly crooked, you're not actually getting it to stick in a corner of the hole.
Yeah.
So that was why that worked great. So Jim still wanted the 2 pivot, but he wanted the sound of the steel saddles. So we ended up putting the steel saddles on a VS100, and that turned into a VG300 because it was mostly made by Goto, and that's what Jim Tyler used for many years. May still do, to be honest with you, but that comes out of Japan from Goto.
Yeah, I like that bridge a lot. That sounded good.
Thank you.
I also had a guitar with the VSV on it also too.
Right.
I thought was very interesting, and also the how the strings went in the block too.
Yeah.
What were they, staggered or something? I'm trying to remember now.
They were staggered. Yeah. Again, I think an awful lot of people seem to forget that when all these holy grail of guitars, which let's face it, people still want to buy a 54 Strat and a 59 Les Paul and a 52 Telly. When I don't think we're ever going to get away from this. I don't think they're always what people think that they are, but the reality of it is that's what people seem to gravitate towards. Mm-hmm. We can make them much better now than what they were when Leo was building them. But they still gravitate towards that style of guitar. But what people forget is all those guitars were designed and made in a time when we had a wound G string, not a plain G string.
Mm-hmm.
And when in about 1962, 63, maybe something like that, I remember first when I was a kid being told about getting a set of Gibson Sonomatics and throwing the low E string away and dropping all the strings down and putting a high E banjo to replace the high E string, which was now the B string on the guitar. And that now moved all the strings over, which now we had a plain G. The minute we did that, the G saddle had to be moved further back on the plate rather than further forward. So when you have a G string, the G saddle is the furthest forward on the plate. So the angle of the string coming out of the hole from the top plate to the intonation point is shallow like all the other strings are. But when you move the G string saddle back to compensate for a plain G, the plain G now comes straight out the block and hooks on the saddle. Mm-hmm. And this is where a lot of the problems with tuning stability come, because the G string always wants to equalize tension and it pulls back and jumps back sharp. So again, looking at that sensibly, okay, then let's recreate the angle. So let's move some of the holes in the block to the back or further back. That way then when the G saddle is moved back on the block, the actual string angle is the same as the high E.
Interesting.
And that's why that bridge works so well.
Interesting. What are some of your favorite, like from a tone perspective? You were talking about how you don't like brass. So what are some of the, we talked about steel, stainless steel. What are some of the best metals that you like to use?
They're basically simple steels. Very fortunate when I got to America, was introduced to Leo Fender, and then as time went by, I would spend more and more time going to the G&L factory because we were only 10 minutes apart. He would answer any question I asked him. There was no kind of secrets. There was no kind of anything. It was just like, if I wanted to know something, I would say, Leo, why did you do this? And he would say why he did it. And in those days, he was having a lot of parts made by a stamping house, which I think was down, must have been near Costa Mesa or somewhere. It wasn't Fullerton, it was somewhere else. And everything he was making, stamping, whatever it was, everything was going through a shaker furnace and being heat treated. So everything was heat treated, including a telly plate, including obviously the top plate of a old vintage vibrato. Everything was heat treated, and this does two things. One of them, it tempers the steel, which will change its tonality, and it also stops things from wearing, which is why the knife edges didn't wear on early Strats. And that's what we're doing now, is everything we do is always heat treated. Everything that we do is heat treated. And that, I think, is more part of the tone in some respects than it is just the actual material. Now, if you make a top plate in brass, you can't heat treat brass. Brass will wear away on the pivots. And my statement before about it taking frequencies away, I believe it does. I don't believe it gives all the frequencies that we're used to hearing. You can use it to take frequencies away to an advantage if you use it in the right place. So I'm not saying brass is bad. I'm just saying the whole belief that started the whole brass mass thing was built in myth, not an actual reality. And I think it's proving that today is the fact that when we go back to doing the old style of manufacturing, people say, yeah, this sounds great. Bit like zinc. You know, it's like zinc is great. Zamac 3 is a very, very cheap way of getting a inertia block or a sustain block, whatever you want to call it. But everybody says a zinc block doesn't sound anywhere near as good as a steel block. Again, I won't get in that argument. Jim Tyler actually loves a zinc block. and you can't argue with Jim's guitars. But, you know, it's just a different material. So I just stayed true to the original specifications, if you like. That if you top plate, you make it out of steel. And if a bent steel saddle, it has to be the right steel, and it has to be heat treated. And generally speaking, they are barrel nickel plated. They're not heavily chrome plated. All those things, heavy chrome plating will change the tonality of something. It's the tiny little details. It's really, really difficult to quantify it. It's really difficult to prove. But people have their own opinions, and everybody's welcome. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion.
Yep. There's a lot of opinions out there. We've got a question from Rico USA. I think we touched on this, Rico, but he said, Mr. Wilkinson, I have owned 40 plus Fender Pluses, most from 1987 to 1992. What insights can you share on the design of the Wilkinson split nut and the transition to the straight Wilkinson nut? Did you work on the design of the Plus?
Yes. And the simple answer to that was, I didn't think the nut itself needed 12 rollers in it. Each string goes over a roller. On the original split nut, each string goes over a roller. Each roller is hardened, heat-treated steel, like you'd find in a needle bearing on a car bearing. And each one is a different diameter to create the radius. So it's quite a complex little thing to put together. It took quite a bit of working out. Fender was shipping, as I said, they were shipping 1,000, 1,200 pieces, sometimes 1,500 pieces a month. And there were some people coming in and complaining that there was a slight open string ring on an open string. And so Fender didn't want to fight this. They didn't want to be sort of like sending new nuts out to people and all those things. So they came to me and they said, look, we know the nut works, but we're getting these people saying this, and this. Can you think of anything? And I said, well, the only thing we can do to really, really stop it and be able to control it is to put another 3 rollers behind the wound strings. And then we've got that angle of attack over the front roller being held down by the back roller, but yet we're still not hurting the friction. And so we did that, and that actually became the new nut that was used on the Ultra. But the reality of it is the first nut was designed in satin chrome, and the reason it was done in satin chrome was to match the satin of the Spurzl tuner and the satin of the bridge that Schaller was making. So it was a cosmetic thing, the satin. That's the first way they came out, and that was just to get an aesthetic. And then in the other ones, they were actually hard chrome plated as well. So that became on the Strat Ultra, I believe. So that's the 2 subtle differences between the nuts. I still personally like the split nut, and Jeff Beck does too. Jeff Beck is still using that nut today. All the guitars he has built by the custom shop at Fender, he still goes with the roller nut, and I take that as a phenomenal compliment from my absolute all-time favorite guitar player.
Of course. Have you ever met him?
I've tried to, but unfortunately, about a year ago, I went to see him in concert and got all the backstage passes from management and everything, and went backstage to see him, and they said, no, he's not seeing anybody. He's just come off stage. So I didn't get to meet him. So no, I've never met him. I just wanted to shake his hand and tell him how much I admired his playing, and thank you very much for using one of my little devices.
Yeah, that's too bad you didn't get a chance to see him, but that's cool that he still
uses it. Our paths will cross, because I don't want to talk about guitars. I just want to talk about cars with him.
Right, exactly. Exactly. He's a big car guy.
Oh, massive car. Yeah, yeah. You know, we were both into hot rods, and I've always been into custom painting and stuff like that.
You still do that?
Still do a little bit, yeah.
That's cool. I actually want to build on this question. Cecil Music asked, what's Trev's thoughts on titanium parts? Just an excuse to overcharge?
No. Yeah, of course it is. No, I don't believe it is. I believe there is something about titanium, but I think with titanium we're getting to the opposite end of the spectrum that we are with brass. And I think that what happens with titanium is they move frequencies another way. I believe brass can rob frequencies. I believe titanium moves frequencies. And it's a bit like the analogy that I use. It's a bit like going back to the first CD ever recorded digitally was, if I'm right on this, it was Ry Cooder's "Bop Till You Drop." And I bought that album, and when I put it on my record player, my turntable, wow, you could hear the hi-hat, you could hear the cymbals, you could hear all those frequencies, which is what digital does. And I think that's exactly what you get with titanium saddles. You start to hear those frequencies and think, wow, that's great. But then when you start to play them and you start to listen to them, you go, hang on a minute, something's missing here. It's like listening to analog. So they are expensive, and they're an expensive material to machine because they're very, very hard and chewy, and they cut up cutters like you wouldn't believe. So a lot of the cost of titanium is in actually the manufacture of it.
Right, but from a tone perspective,
again, my opinion. I'm you know, somebody asked me a question, I'll tell you what I think, but it doesn't mean to say that I'm dead right. I can be.
No. And I mean, I'm curious of your thoughts also of the different size blocks on a Floyd Rose, and whether it should be brass, titanium, steel. I know my preference is steel, if I can get a steel block, personally. But what are your thoughts?
I think there's definitely, excuse me, there's definitely a correlation between the way a string and a ball end sits in a steel block in comparison to how it sits in a brass block, again, because of transmission. Because you've got vibration coming over the saddle, going down the string, going down to the ball end, sitting in the block, doing something to that block, and then that block is connected to the guitar via the springs, which go to the claw, which is fastened to the body, which is nearly at the end of the neck, and then you get that reverberation of strings going around the guitar, up the neck, down the back of the neck, through the body, up the bridge, all various ways. So I can see that a brass block, sorry, it's not coronavirus, don't worry. just a joke. We're dying in front of an audience.
Sorry. We're all thinking it, right?
I've done lots of times in front of an audience on stage. I ain't going to die in front of you guys. No. So I would think you would hear a difference between a brass block on a standard vibrato system, and you also hear a difference in an aluminum block. I remember many years ago meeting Alan Holsworth and having a great conversation with Alan about that, and he loved aluminum blocks. And again, there is a tonality there. I think that it would be harder to distinguish a tonality change between a brass block and a steel block on a Floyd, purely because of the way the string is anchored on the saddle and it's not running through the block. Mm-hmm. However, again, after saying that, yes, there will be some transmission into that block because that block is bolted to a steel plate where it has a steel saddle bolted to it and the string is locked to it. So some vibration has to come from that string where it sits on the saddle, goes down through the saddle, down through the top plate, into that block, again, back onto the block, into the springs that go into the claw. Mm-hmm. So there will be a difference. The reality of it is if it sounds better to you, it must be right.
Exactly. Cool.
I'm sort of one of these guys. I believe it all sounds different.
Yeah.
But I'm sort of with Floyd's, at least, I'm sort of like, what was on the original and it wasn't broken. It worked, and a lot of recordings and a lot of things you love were recorded with that original bridge.
Are you referring to a vintage Fender bridge?
Well, no, I'm just stating with the Floyds, like with all these block upgrades and things that exist now. Was it ever really broken? I mean, it sure worked all through the heyday of Floyd's. Was it ever really broken?
I agree totally. I agree.
But then again, if it sounds better to you, go for it. Awesome.
Exactly.
It's whatever, guys. It's whatever people hear. It's whatever people hear.
Yep. Bent Rossum has a question for you. He says, Trev, did Leo Fender really say to you, why do people want to play my old guitars, Trev? They're piles of junk. Is that really a quote?
It really is. It really is. Yeah. Yeah. And my answer to that was, with respect, Leo, maybe some of them weren't that as good as what people think they are, but the reality of it is, you've got it so right, or so near to right, and we have actually made it even more right, that you cannot improve on it. Even though he was working at G&L, obviously his third company, and he was trying to make it better all the time. That's what he was doing. He wanted to make it better. And in reality wise, we're all making better guitars these days. I mean, if you were to produce a guitar today in China or wherever with a neck pocket as bad as some of the 52, 53 tellies that I've seen, or some of the 65 Strats that I've seen, you would get absolutely kicked out of the shop. They would just go, this is rubbish. But yet we hold these guitars in such high regard, holy grails. And all Leo was trying to do was build a guitar as fast and as cheaply as possible. Yeah. And that's what they were. And so you really, really look at some vintage guitars, and you look at that step where the neck pocket sticks out, and all those things that now, even in China, on an $80 guitar, we can't get away with. Yet people will pay 45 grand for one with a neck pocket that you can get 3 credit cards down the side of.
Yes, that's so true.
So that was Leo. That's exactly the way he said it, and I can understand what he meant, because he was actually trying to do it better at G&L. That was his modus operandi. That was what, basically what I've tried to do with hardware, and what he was trying to do with guitars, was make it better all the time than what he'd done in the past. So he knew what he'd done in the past. Mm-hmm. But you can't get away from how goddamn right those guitars are.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's some duds, but a lot of people find some real gems too from back then. There was so much discrepancies, even in the G&L days, where he still had ladies hand winding pickups, which of course today is like, oh, scatter wind, it must sound great, it must be this, it must be that. The reality of it is it's incredibly inconsistent. And at the end of the day, they would just put all the pickups that they'd made, and they'd go into a box on the end of the bench. And then they would move then the next day into the final assembly department, and whoever was putting the pick guards together would take a pick guard, and he or she would dip their hand into the box, and they would go 1 pickup, 2 pickup, 3 pickup. They would then go, that's in the neck, that's in the bridge, that's in the middle. Yes, they were tested for conductivity. They were tested to make sure that there was a circuit there, but they weren't actually checked for k-ohm output or resistance. So therefore, you get some Strats that have got maybe a 5.9 or a 6.1 pickup in the neck, and then it's got a 5.4 pickup in the bridge. Well, it's common sense to me that the bridge pickup will not have the same, what's the word I'm looking for here?
because the bridge pickup and the string movement is so little, then the voltage that can produce, there's going to be a difference when the amplifier reads it. So consequently, you get guitars that are great rhythm guitars because the neck pickup sounds fabulous, but the bridge pickup might not sound that good. Then if you swap those two pickups around, you probably turn that guitar into a much better guitar. Well, we didn't know about that in those days. We know about it now. We know how to take pickups and calibrate them. We know why a pickup should be slightly overwound compared to another pickup. We've learned all these things all over these years. They didn't know that in those early days of Fender. They just were building guitars. So consequently, you had in those days to go into a shop and try 20 strats to find out the strat you really like.
Right. Quick question, Trev. Do you have a way of adjusting your gain on your microphone, or no?
Hang on a sec. I might be able to. Let me look at this.
Okay. It's just coming in a little hot.
Okay.
Yeah, when you talk louder, it distorts, and then people can't understand.
You don't think it's the English accent? Is that any better?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Much better.
I've gone down to number 7 from number 9.
Well, it worked.
Now we know the answer for that.
Okay, cool. So here's a question for you from Brian Landreth. He says, question for Trev, will the 5+1 Strat bridge fit a Mexican body?
Depends what Mexican body he's got. The Mexican Strats have changed so many times over the years, depending on what bridge Fender wanted to put on it. Generally speaking, the only way I can manufacture hardware is to use dimensions that are, for the want of a better terminology, correct. In other words, we'll presume that a 1954 Strat spacing and a 1961 Strat spacing, which are all the same, is the correct way of doing it. If I made all my bridges to fit some Mexican Strats, they wouldn't fit the majority of guitars in the market today. So I can only make bridges really to fit what's out there. I can't control the decision that Fender make in the early days of the Mexican Strats by using, for the want of a better term, a less expensive bridge, which didn't really matter so long as it had 6 screws and looked like a Fender bridge. Later on, people learnt more and better quality product was put into it. So the 5+1 could fit your Mexican Strat, but it may not. You need to check spacing first before you buy it.
Okay, thank you. We've got a bunch of questions from folks. Same question. Rollo Music asked, how is the new locking bridge doing on the market?
Incredible. We can't keep it in stock.
That's what you want to hear.
That's exactly. It's been mind-blowing. The sales of bridges and the sales of saddles have just gone through the roof. And we just get the feedback we're getting on Reverb of people who put them on and they're buying 2 more sets, 3 more sets, they're buying 2 more bridges. It's been phenomenal. That's all I can say. It's incredible.
That's awesome. Are you having troubles getting more stock?
We're not having troubles. It's just ramping up to it. Our orders are going up all the time. Luckily, the major manufacturers that we use are in Korea. They were hit quite badly with the virus, but they managed it incredibly well. And from what we can tell with our communications with them, they're up and running. They're making things. And I'm expecting a big shipment in any day now. So watch this space, Reverb. But Reverb has been phenomenal for us.
That's fantastic. And there was another question earlier. Do you have a website or you? Yeah.
We've been putting a website together for about the last 25 years. In all seriousness, yes, we are putting a website together. I want it to be a good website. I want it to be full of information. I want it to be as good as it possibly can. And it's just something that is in process. So what we decided to do, again, when we did this new bridge and some of the other new stuff that we've done, we decided to create an Instagram following, and I've left that to Kate. She's great at that, and that guides people basically to reverb.com, which is Wilkinson Direct, And we are now starting to get a lot of inquiries from distribution, and obviously more guitar companies. So I think we've got a tiger by the tail, and it will be a lot easier to get it. And then when we got the website ready to go, and I'm happy with it, we'll push the button, and I'm hoping that there'll be an awful lot of information on that site. You're doing a great job with your show here. This is a wonderful opportunity to be able to answer questions. I've always said it, if you could sit on the shoulder of a salesperson in a shop, you would sell a phenomenal amount of gear. But you can't do that. But with the advent of the internet and the information, some of the information is right, some of the information is wrong, and we've all got our own ideas on that. But it is a great way of getting information out to people. I just want to make sure that the information we get out is as informative as it possibly can be, and then it's up to the individual to make that decision.
No, that's great. Fantastic. Dave, we got a question for you from James Abel. He says, "Hey Dave, love my PT20. What settings would you suggest to go for a 20-watt plexi tone? I have the model with the structure switch."
Depends on what that means. So a plexi tone as in classic rock, not that distorted, or a plexi tone more of a completely cranked up Van Halen style thing, or so you know, what are you looking for?
Yeah, that's true.
Jimi Hendrix, or you know, or Jimmy Page, or Van Halen. Right. Really, Van Halen, it's just the gain on 10. So, you know, as it is, if you're doing something else, lower gain, I mean, play with the gain structure. Just, you know, start it at the lowest setting and see if that gets you where you want it to be. And then if not, just click it up another notch.
Yeah, because it's got the three-way switch, right? So
yeah, it's got a three-way switch. So yeah, so I mean, I don't know. It depends on what do you call? Is that a clean plexi, a semi-broken up plexi, or a cranked up on 10 plexi with a variac? You know?
Right, exactly.
So yeah,
okay. Andrew Morgan has a question, and Trev just answered it. So he says, "Great to see you guys, Trev. How can I get one of those new locking trems Pete Thorn keeps raving about? Have been searching the internet and still tremless." Go to Reverb.
Wilkinson Direct. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, and then that was Gonzalo Cordovas who said, "Is there a Wilkinson webpage?" So we just answered that. So yeah, so how did... So John Suhr, you were telling me actually offline that you met John Suhr when he first started working with Bradshaw.
He was working out the back of Bob Bradshaw's shop. Yeah, I was in Hollywood for some reason, and I called in, and that's how I met John when after he'd moved in from New York, and he was doing a refret on somebody's guitar, some well-known player in LA. I can't remember now who it was. And I was absolutely amazed at the trouble that John was going to do this refret. I don't think anybody paid that kind of attention to refrets in those days. He is one of the best builders there is. A tremendous respect for John. Again, he's doing exactly what Leo was doing, and hopefully what I'm trying to do. It's just build that guitar better and more careful and pay more attention to detail. But you still can't get away from those classic shapes and those classic tones and the way the guitar functions. But the fret job he was doing was incredible. He was literally pulling the frets, and then he was dremeling out the slots slightly, and then he was perfectly radiusing the fret wire. And the fret wire would just drop in the slot. It wasn't being pushed in. It was actually literally sitting in the slot. It was a tolerance fit, if you like. And then he would do like 3 frets at a time, and he would glue them. He would super glue them in, and then he would have a radius block and clamp them, and he wouldn't move on to the next 3 frets until those 3 frets had set. And they were absolutely flawless. So what was happening was he wasn't pushing frets in and forcing the neck into a back bow because he was pushing the tangs in and changing the neck that way. the neck was dead, if you like, what I call dead. It was absolutely flat, non-stressed at all. And then he would open up the slots and he would drop the frets in literally individually, clamp them in place. It just, the attention to detail was just phenomenal. We just became friends and spoke a lot, and then spoke a lot more when he moved to the Fender Custom Shop. And then by the time he'd started his own company, I moved back to the UK, 1997. But we kept in touch, and he's been a great friend. I just love the guy to bits. He's so dedicated and so good at what he does, and it's phenomenal that he's picked up on another Wilkinson product. I feel really honoured that he saw the potential, and it's working for us both.
Yeah, it's a hot thing, and John's a great guy. Could you tell the story of how you met Leo Fender?
Yeah, if I can remember it. I was trying to think the other day, actually, because it was the anniversary of his death a couple of weeks ago. We did an Instagram post. I was actually with Leo on the afternoon of the night that he died.
Oh, wow.
Which, yeah, it's not something that you really think, oh, great. But that is the truth. I think in about late 1985, I moved to California in September 1984. And in 1985, and I can't remember now who it was that took me to meet Leo, because I was really nervous. And it was either a guitar player called John Baxter, or it was Jeff Ross, or it was Jon Jorgensen. I can't remember now. But I met all of them in that period of time. But I went to meet Leo, and he was interested to see what I'd done, and I had a little guitar with me that had the roller on, and he was really intrigued with it, and he thought it was great, and we had a little chat about it, and then from then on, I would meet him later and more often, and we would literally just talk about guitars, which he loved. He was so I always called G&L Leo Fender's train set, because that's what it was. It was a train set. He was losing money hand over fist every year. He didn't care. It was keeping him alive. He loved doing what he was doing. He was a great inspiration. He was a phenomenal mentor, and so open. And I was so grateful for that, because, as I said, you asked him a question, he gave you the answer, and it's incredible to get that openness. It's incredible.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I love G&L guitars. I mean, I've been a fan of G&L guitars for a long time. So yeah. I actually went by their booth at NAMM, not this past NAMM, but the NAMM before.
Right.
And Phyllis Fender was there.
Yep.
I think she's passed away since, or maybe not.
Do you know, I didn't know that. I'm sorry to hear that. If that's true.
I might be wrong. But I might be wrong. So it could be wrong. Yeah. But yeah, I didn't see her at the last G&L, at the last booth. So, but yeah, they had a book about Fender, Leo Fender, and the guy from Dale Roberts, I think, or one of the guys from G&L was still there. I forget what his name was. Anyway.
Wasn't Dale Hyatt, was it? Because I think Dale Hyatt passed away as well.
It might have been someone else then. I'm just throwing names out.
Sure.
You're just taking a wild guess.
I'm just taking a wild guess. So, oh well. No, that's awesome. Yeah, I like I said, I love their bridge. I mean, that bridge on the G&L is such a huge improvement over the bridge on the Fender style bridge.
Yeah, well, that was typical Leo. You know, that's the two pivot bridge, and you know, interesting thing about that bridge, when I asked him about why he'd done the pivot post head so big, because when you install the G&L bridge, you actually have to put the posts in after. You can't put the bridge onto the post. You have to put the bridge. You offer the bridge to the guitar, and then you put the posts through the bridge and screw them in. And the reason he did that was he said he didn't want it flying off and smacking somebody around the side of the head.
Man, that's awesome. Yeah, he's just so innovative. So Dave, what else is going on with you?
Going on with me?
Yeah.
You know, it's just slow around here. I mean, we're shut down, you know? So, I'm here working, but, you know, in my own personal shop by myself, pretty much. So I'm still doing mods if anyone's interested. I'm still doing, you know, modifications to Friedman products, custom builds and things like that. And I got a lot of time right now, so now's the time to really hit me up. To be honest.
How's Grover doing?
Grover's okay, from what I understand. Yeah, my partner Rob talks with him more, so he's okay. He was okay. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
We'll give him my best when you see him. I haven't seen him for a long time.
Yes, I will. Absolutely. I don't know when I'm going to see him, but I might talk to him.
Yeah, I texted him actually just the other day, just to see how he was doing. And
he's hanging in there. I mean, you know, I mean, you know, this whole thing's rough for everyone and all their businesses and everything for everyone. I mean, really rough for some people. You know, rough. It'll be rough for us down in the future here for sure, because, you know, the factory's not producing gear, and, you know, financially everything is slowed down, so to speak, you know.
Yeah, there's going to be a hell of a ramp up when it finally does settle down.
Yeah, but I know, you know, you guys seem to like been still emailing me and wanting stuff and do stuff, so I'm still doing it, so feel free. email away, friedmanamps@gmail. So I'll get it and I'll do it.
That's cool. At least, you know, and it's like a saving grace that the shipping services are still open.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you know. So I'm setting up a little shop at home also, so I can, even though I only live a half a mile from my shop, but you know, you start to get just freaked out about stuff. So it's like, why not have a little workspace at home too?
There you go.
Yep. By the way, I was wrong about Phyllis. She's still alive and well. So
good. Glad to hear it.
Just wanted to say, I didn't want to say anything that I was wrong about.
No.
We have a really awesome name from somebody here. His name is Unfucking Believable. He says,
he's been on before, hasn't he?
He has. Yes.
We love that name.
Yes. Trev's thoughts on the Evertune. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah. Yeah. Again, I can see where they're going with it. It's like a lot of devices that are like that. I mean, obviously, it can't be a vibrato, so it's a fixed bridge. When you get it to the point of where it's doing what it should do, to me, it actually changes the feel of the guitar. And then when you take it back to how you want it to feel, it doesn't do the job it was designed to do. So it's an answer to a question, just exactly whether people really want that answer. That's a tough one. I've messed with it. I looked at it when it first came out, and you just don't see it that often. You don't see it that much. So I can't really say whether it's been a success or not. I think, again, it's one of those products that the concept is great. The thinking behind it was brilliant. It was well engineered. But again, it doesn't quite do what you want it to do until there's a mechanical connection between a bridge, whether it's a vibrato or a fixed bridge, and a guitar player. There's something that a guitar player, when he plays something, he can tell that it feels right. And if it doesn't feel right, he has a really, really hard time describing why it doesn't feel right, which makes it difficult for a guitar repair guy or a guitar builder to actually fix the problem for him. And I think that's what happens with products like this. There's been a lot of products like this in the industry, things that are supposed to stop you from going out of tune when you break a bridge, when you break a string on a vibrato bridge. The problem is when that product is actually working to do that job, it's not a vibrato anymore. It becomes an up and down device. And the one thing that I've always liked about vibratos, and I never call them tremolos because that's not what they are, they're vibratos, is that subtle vibrato you can get. And that's not there on an awful lot of products that have these devices that compensate for a broken string or anything like that. So the key to it to me is making the vibrato work the way a vibrato should, and still address all those problems.
Yeah, that
makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense. We have a question. Let's see. Where was it? I just had it. I just lost it. Oh, Dave, could you mod a runt to have more of the untethered Marshall Plexi style Kerrang from 20?
Yep. Which run? 20, 50?
Doesn't say.
I mean, generally, it depends on which one. I mean, generally speaking, the runts do have a little bit more of that, and they're a little bit brighter than some of the other amps. But yes, the answer is sure, absolutely. I know exactly what I'll do.
Okay. Cecil Music asks, isn't one of Trev's bridges used on the Brian May models?
Yes, it is.
Oh yeah, which guitar is that?
That's there's a couple of very, very high dollar Brian May red fireplaces that are made in Japan, and one guy in the UK does them, which use the old style Schaller vibrato, which was the modification that is the bridge that Brian took off a guitar to put on his guitar when he was building it with his father. They are very, very expensive. To try and make the guitar at a much sensible price point, $699, $799, whatever it is, he wanted another vibrato which would work as smooth, and he chose the WVP, which is my stagger drill block with the wave knife edge, 2 pivot, stainless steel saddles, and they've been using an awful lot of those on the lower price model, and it's something that Brian uses, and it to him it works great. He's very, very happy with it. Again, I'm thrilled that they've decided to use one of our products.
Yeah, that's awesome. Are there any other artists that you've worked with directly?
Nobody incredibly famous, but really, really good players, because an awful lot of the stuff that's done, was done around the LA area. Easy for me to say, the LA area when I was there. Is you're doing work for people who are hired guns, and they're great guitar players, but they're not like Eric Clapton or Jeff Beck or somebody like that. They are just hired guns. So yeah, I've worked on a lot of guitars for a lot of guys, but I haven't got that sort of like claim to fame. I mean, the nice thing we got a few months ago, just prior to NAMM, was we had Joe Perry's guitar tech come to the NAMM show, and Joe Perry specified the VS100 on his limited edition Gibson Les Paul. So that was a cool thing to see. That was the single pickup one, Dave. Yeah, and that was nice. And the guitar tech, I can't remember his name because I was speaking to somebody at the booth and he was talking to Kate. He's absolutely thrilled with it. He said the thing is working great. So again, really, really pleased. It's something that we did like getting on for 27, 28 years ago is still relevant. It's nice that it's become a standard of the industry, which is I'm incredibly proud of.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
awesome,
very cool. I don't know if this question is relevant to you, Trev, but they asked Wednesday Store is the name of their name there. What's your involvement with VintageGuitars? Imagine VintageGuitars may have had a few letters from bigger companies in its history. How are any requests received and worked? Anything you can share?
Okay, good job. We got a long time. Yeah, I got involved with VintageGuitars as a consultant to help grow the brand. Vintage was a provincial brand in the UK, and they were basically looking to build guitars as good as they possibly could at the lower medium price point of the market. And as I've learned over the years, It's not where you make something, it's how you make it. And if you teach the people to do it correctly, you can produce a very, very good product at a very, very sensible price. It's all about quality control, and it's all about building a guitar from the inside out. So that consultancy, I stopped that consultancy about 18 months ago. I'm very proud of what we did. We turned the provincial brand into a brand that's in over 100 countries worldwide. We get great accolades wherever the guitars appear. I just decided that I couldn't do any more for the brand, and I had other things that I wanted to do. So I gave up the consultancy, but I'm so pleased that they still continue, and I'm certainly, as I say, very pleased that my name is associated with them.
Great. I wasn't aware of that, so that's great.
Yeah.
Harmonicaster with the super chat. Thank you. Can Trev tell us his story of the molded switch Vibrocell guitars? Great guitars, but company failed.
Yeah. Wow, these people really dig. Like, they find out all kinds of things, don't they?
They're digging
in. Yeah. Again, as a consultant working with many guitar companies over the years, I was approached by a guy from Korea, and he said that he had invented this whole new way of making a guitar, and he would like to show me what it was. And so I was on a trip to Korea at that time, working with my friends at Mirror Music on the Italia project. And he hadn't actually invented this new product. I had actually been made aware of this material a couple of years before, because at that time, again, because Fender was such a good customer of mine, we used to spend an awful lot of time together, Fender, a custom shop, and myself. And I was privy to a lot of things that were going on in the company with R&D and Dan Smith and George Blander. And they were experimenting with this guitar made out of what I would consider to be structural foam. Basically the foam that you would fill a crack in a brick wall with, in an aerosol can. Mm-hmm. And that's what this guy thought. He created a new way of making a guitar. I said, I'm sorry, you haven't created it. It's been available for a while. Fender have looked at it, but the problem for Fender was, after they'd made the body, they still had to prime it, they still had to flat it, they still had to paint it, they still had to polish it. So the reality of it is they weren't really saving any labor. They were actually just saving a little bit on buying an older blank and creating the blank. Although the blank, when they created it, was already shaped into a Strat contour. They decided not to run with it. So I knew about it, and I could see the potential in it. I still have 5 pieces of Vibrocell here, and in my factory, and I have one which is as dense as the hardest maple you could buy, and I have one that is light and as airy as the most beautiful piece of swamp ash you could buy, and I have the 3 in between it. So the nice thing about this material is the amount you force into it, and as you compress it, the more you put in, the denser it gets. So my concept behind this was, okay, let's get a material which we can control the density of. So in other words, I can make a guitar body which is as airy and as light as swamp ash, yet I can actually put a neck to it which is like hard rock Canadian maple. And we can do that all in one mold. And also the nice thing about that is the contour on the surface can be made to create whatever shape you want. And it doesn't cost anything to do it. Once you've made the mold, you can create whatever shape guitar you want, as complex as you want. Mm-hmm. The one thing I do want to state here is I did not design the one with the top horn that's crooked like a Parker fly. That was the brand owner's design, and I told him at the time not to do it, and that got him into a lot of financial and legal trouble. But some people just don't listen. But it was a great project, and I had to create the name Vibrocell, because you're not going to sell a foam guitar, are you?
No.
So, so I sort of thought about this. What is it? Well, okay, so wood has cells in it, and we want wood to vibrate. So I created the name Vibrocell. And the real reason why it was called switch was the original concept was I wanted to be able to add tonality to the guitar by changing a huge part of the body made in tone woods. They actually bolted into the body, so you could actually put tonality into this what would be an inert material, which you were in complete control of, so that you could put a piece of swamp ash in it, which would be like probably 70% of the guitar body, or you could put maple, or you could put mahogany, or anything like that. That was never put on the market. I still have samples here. I still have prototypes. I've got samples and prototypes of everything that I've done, whether it's right or wrong.
That's great.
So that's basically the history of switch guitars. But it's amazing how there's a lot of good write-ups on them, and people are looking for them all over the place.
What year was this?
Good question. 99. Something like that. 99, 2000.
Wow, I don't remember them. Do you, Dave?
I don't remember them at all.
Yeah.
No.
Wow. Interesting. Well,
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I have a couple people asked me a couple questions here. DFW listener said, have you stiffened up the power supply for a small box owners? I'm looking for a quicker attack and less give. I can absolutely do that. It works. Hit me up, friedmanamps@gmail. And Brent Rossum was saying, is Dave talking about non-Friedman amps for modding? Absolutely. Or Friedman amps. Either way. All of the above. I'll take it all right now. It's not a problem. It's just a good time, you know. And again, just email me, friedmanamps@gmail. We can talk about it. And then one further down I have, which I've lost now. Someone was asking about modding his JCM 800 to be more like a BE. And, Skylar Carrion? I don't know. Sorry. Yes, I can mod your 2203. So hit me up, Friedman Amps, Gmail.
Yeah, now's the time to do it.
Now is the right time to do it.
Yeah, for sure.
So.
Cecil Music has another great question for Trev. Well, at least I think so. Marc, could you ask Trev if he ever asked Leo about getting tremolo and vibrato backwards?
Yes.
What did he say?
He didn't want to get into a fight with Paul Bigsby because Paul Bigsby had already registered Bigsby as a vibrato, so therefore he had to come up with another word. And he truly knew that because of being an amp designer, which is what he was, that tremolo is a change in volume and vibrato is a change in pitch. And if you can change the volume of a guitar with a vibrato arm, I'd love to see you do it. But that was why he did it. And it's been known as a tremolo ever since. But that's why all my patents have always stated that it's a patent on a vibrato. And I've always been very, very particular about that. Okay. But it's just one of those things that we accept it in the industry now. So
yeah, exactly. Just call it a whammy bar.
There you go. Or a wiggle stick.
A wiggle stick, exactly. So Harmonicaster says Sammy Ash has a Switch Vibrocell in his collection.
Really?
That's funny. That's cool. Yeah, I'm friends with him on Facebook. Nice guy. They're all like that whole Sam Ash family. I feel for them while their business is closed.
Oh yeah.
Tough.
Everybody.
Yep. Mark Paradise Dave, since Rackman sliding shells are no longer available, what are you using?
I'm sorry, say that again. I was reading something on the screen.
Since Rackman sliding shelves are no longer available, what are you using?
We make our own. So we've made an improvement on that. I've been using forever. It's a lighter material. It's not steel, so that's nice. And you can get them at our metal manufacturer, which is Fix Pedal Boards. Look up Fix Pedal Boards online, and they're in their online shop, and they're still open. So they're one of the essential businesses, the metal fab place.
So this is an interesting question, and I actually was going to suggest this to Bruce Egnator the other day because I saw that he canceled his class, and then he was selling the kits. So if anybody wants to buy a kit from Egnator, an amp kit, you can buy that from him now. I think he had some. But I was actually going to suggest to him, and this is what Gonzalo Cordovas asked. He said, Dave, good times for a Skype technical session for my runt. Cheers from Chile. Don't hate me, Dave. Lockdown drives everybody crazy.
Yes, he's been sorry, Gonzalo. Yes, we can. I just haven't made room to do it yet. I know you've been bugging me about that. Obviously, you're going stir crazy. So we'll make it happen. But yeah. I think Bruce could possibly do his amp class via Zoom even.
Yeah. That's what I was going to suggest to him online. Like, why don't you get those people who are ship the amps out to those people and just do a Zoom or a Skype lesson on people to build those amps.
Yeah. I think they'd have to, have their own solder and soldering iron or something, but
true. That's true.
I mean, unless he worked out some sort of deal where he sends it and they send it back or something. I don't know. Yeah, I guess everything's possible.
Yeah. I felt bad. I was like, oh, you could probably do that virtually. But, yeah. So, Trev, I've got a question for you. Did you ever consider building your own guitar, like a Wilkinson brand guitar?
Yeah. I created the brand Fret King when I was in California in the mid-90s.
I remember that guitar, yeah.
Yeah, but I called it Fret King by Trev Wilkinson. And I later sold it to the same company that owns Vintage. I sold it to JHS, but I still got to play with it as a consultant. I guess there's a guitar in me somewhere. So it's something that I've never written off. But it's really difficult to think what to do. It's like you've seen so many, Dave and I were talking before we went live about this Bond guitar behind me, which is this black guitar here with a very interesting stepped fingerboard. It's not got frets. It's actually just got a staircase in machined phenolic. Fabulous neck to play, but the whole guitar as a concept is just the answer to the question nobody ever asked. And then you get everybody, you don't get everybody, you get other people. Like, tremendous respect for Ken Parker and Larry Fishman for doing the Parker Fly. Again, great concept, beautifully executed. Ken spent a lot of time working out the tonalities of pine and the way that the guitar was manufactured, and then the exoskeleton, which was just a layer of carbon fiber on the back to give it the structural rigidity it needed. But everybody just looked at it because they painted the guitar a solid color. Everybody thought it was a carbon fiber guitar, and immediately you do something that goes away from all the swamp ash, maple, mahogany, whatever. People start making a judgment on what that guitar will sound like before they've even listened to it. So, to get back to the answer to your question, is there a guitar in me somewhere? Yes, it has to be a guitar that is individual enough for me to be able to feel I've done something worthwhile and not just made a good Strat or a good Les Paul or what have you. But I have to restrain myself from going too far and building something which at the end of the day will become somebody's heirloom. It won't be, it's so difficult to create another Strat. So I'd love to do it, but it's being formulated all the time. as I work on things, as I think of things, but I haven't actually quite got to the point where I'm ready to pull the trigger.
Gotcha. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I saw because Floyd released his guitar at NAMM this past year, which I thought was interesting.
Yep.
Did you check that out, Dave? Did you see that?
Yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, it was kind of cool. I mean, I didn't sit and actually play it too much, but the concept was interesting.
Yeah, the concept was interesting. I mean, I don't know how many he's selling of them, let's just say, but.
Well, this is tough. It's like what Trev was just talking about. It's like, you know, you get beat up for maybe doing something that's not original, but if you do something original, no one buys it. Right. So there's a fine line there that you know you have to. I mean, if you, it's like, can't you create an original circuit with an original tone and original this and that? Yeah, okay, sure, yes. The answer is sure, absolutely. But then they're going to go, but it doesn't sound like my Plexi, or it doesn't sound like this, or it doesn't sound like that. And I'm like, okay.
Right. That's because
it's because it's so ingrained. All this stuff is so ingrained in you with years and years of, you know, seeing Strats and Tellys and Les Pauls and your mind just, it's very hard, even for guitars especially, it's very hard for a company to do something different that is accepted. I mean, there has been some exceptions. Like Van Halen guitars, for instance, like the be it the original Ernie Ball or you know, the Peavey or the Fender. But that was successful though because it was Eddie Van Halen. So if that guitar just came out with that shape, without him behind it, would that guitar have succeeded? Don't think so, probably. You know, I mean, think about it. So it's very hard, you know. Like there's a company, Scandinavian company. I forgot exactly where they are. Astrides or whatever.
Yeah, Aristides or something.
Aristides. I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
Yes, yeah, I know what you're talking.
You know, composite. It's composite bodies, and they're actually really well-made guitars. Really, really nice concepts. They have
new version of a Switch guitar.
the you know, super nice concept, super cool look. You know how popular they are in the U.S. I don't think they are. Maybe more so in Europe. But they're cool guitars, and I respect them for doing something, trying to do something different. I mean, there's a factory tour I just watched recently from them online that, you know, shows the whole process and stuff, and it's quite cool. It's quite cool. I played a few before, and they were great guitars. Another thing that comes to mind that was really interesting when I was in Spain, I had been shown this guitar before at a NAMM show, I think, a few years ago. But then again, I saw it when I was in Spain last year, and it's all aluminum guitar. The whole guitar is milled. Fretboard's removable.
Yep.
But that has like frets milled in. It's removable, so you can replace it if you need. But the whole guitar is made of aluminum and quite cool. I mean, I'm not one to, you know, be jumping on something like that, but like I felt this guitar. I'm like, this is pretty cool, and I like how it looked, and it sounded pretty good, and it was really interesting. But the amount of craftsmanship that went into that, and the look of it was amazing. I met the builder and really respect his work on that. That was amazing. I mean, is that going to be a huge seller? Probably not, but super cool. I forgot. I wish I remembered the name I'd have
There's been an awful lot of people try to do aluminum stuff. I mean, obviously, you go back to Travis Bean, you go back to the original Kramer, and you know the thing about that in those days was the fact that the Travis Bean neck felt too cold. You left it in the car overnight, and it was like a block of ice. I love the Travis Beans. I had a T1000 Artist. I thought it was a great concept. I even had a mess about myself about making an aluminum neck for a while, and I actually put an insert in the back so that you could feel wood. And again, that's what Kramer did with their T-neck. The problem is it just costs so much to do it. You create this great instrument that has an awful lot of worth, but the price just makes it prohibitive for a guy to buy it. And he will look at that, whatever it is. I'm not saying I don't even know how much the guitar is, don't know the brand, but you know, from my experience of CNC machining, the guitar's got to be $5,000. And
yeah,
it's like,
no, they had it coming in less than that. I mean, I might have been like 4 or 35 or 38 or something.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
So you know, so it's great, but the guy's going to look at that $3,800 in his hand, and he's going to go, well, I could buy a custom shop Fender. Or I could buy an Ultra, and I could buy a Friedman amp with that money, and I know I can sell the amp if I need to, and I know I can sell the Fender if I need to. How much am I going to get for this aluminum guitar?
Yeah, right.
I remember years ago I was involved in the Horner ATX RTX guitar project, which was a thing that we did between Germany and America, and we were taking it around shops around America to show it to people, getting feedback on it, marketing feedback. And I was in a shop, and I think it was in New York at the time, and we were showing the guitar to the store owner, and a customer was in there, and he was asking about it, and he was looking at it, and he was saying, "Wow, this is great! This is fantastic! That's wonderful! And how much is it?" And we told him how much it was. "Wow, that's a good price." And then at the end of the day, he said, "Yeah, but I'll buy a telly." And so I just said to him, "Why are you going to buy a Telecaster? You just told me how great this guitar is, how wonderful it sounds, how great it plays, and you're happy with the price." "Yeah," he said, "but you know, if I get it home and I don't like it, I know that I can always sell it and get most of my money back." And I didn't really have an answer, but I just said, if you're thinking about selling a guitar before you've actually bought it, I don't think you should buy it. But that's the mindset that we deal with, and I just want people to buy guitars for what they are.
Yeah.
And appreciate them, and you know, buy what you want, not what you think you should buy.
It's true.
People buy guitars for all the wrong reasons. They buy a guitar because they don't want to get laughed at rehearsal if they buy a guitar that everybody goes, "What'd you buy that piece of shit for?"
Yep. Hey, Dave, was the name of that company Alumasonic?
Oh, good question. I totally do not remember at all.
Okay. Yeah,
I know. I think it's out of Spain.
Yeah, there's a bunch of companies, Illuminati Guitars, then another one called Electrical Guitar Company, the finest aluminum instruments. But maybe I'll look up Spain, see what it said.
I mean, I could find it if I'm looking, but I'm not right now.
Yeah, I just figured I'd give it a try. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything. Yeah, that's, you know, building a guitar is, like you said, it's there's so much competition. It's hard.
This is what Leo was fighting with G&L. This is what Leo couldn't understand. Why aren't people buying my G&L guitars? They're much better than what I used to make.
And it was the resale value.
I agree with you. I think G&L's a great guitar. It's a very, very well made guitar. A lot of the stuff that Leo was working on, like the Z pickups and all those things, and you know, he had a patent on a pickup with a slot head screw in it, and if you change the direction of the slot head in the screw, it changed the tonality of the pickup.
Mm.
Because it changes the way the magnetic field comes out of the magnet and around the coil. You know, the guy was just thinking all the time. Yeah. I think he had about something like 200 and something patents. But nobody appreciated what he was trying to do. And I think now probably the Z coils with the hum cancelling, but still being single coil, which I believe he actually did at the request of John Jorgensen. You know, people are saying, well, these pickups sound great now, but in the days when I was there, nobody liked the sound of those pickups. Mm-hmm. Again, they were hearing with their eyes.
Right. Mm-hmm. Probably the same with the MFD.
That's what our industry does all the time. It listens with its eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, he just had great stuff. But I always during the years, even on the gear page and stuff like that, people would say, yeah, G&L, great guitars, but horrible resale value. Horrible resale value.
And keep it. And play it.
Yeah.
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 You know, the funny thing with me with G&Ls, I think they were well-made guitars. They always looked a bit weird for me, you know. So the headstock was, I don't know. I wasn't that keen on the headstock, but you can have arguments about headstocks all day long. Mm-hmm. You know, the trem, although worked cool, looked kind of bizarre for at least my style, you know, and then some of the pickups too, they were interesting choices and stuff. Not saying that they didn't sound good either. So I you know, with guitars, I often think it's the person that the attention to detail is what makes the guitar. So when you're saying John Suhr guitars, you know, his attention to detail on that refret we talked about earlier, it's the attention to detail that really, really sells that guitar. And that can be everything, just the aesthetic, the fret work, the fret edges. Mm-hmm. Is the edges of the neck rolled over so it feels friendly and great. You know, I mean, you can go on. The fretboard radius, everything. The attention to the overall detail, the vision of what you want to do with the guitar. Sometimes there's great builders that do not have those attention to details, and fail because of it. And then, you know, there's other people that have those attention to details that become great successes, like John Suhr, for instance. You know, Jim Tyler,
Grover Jackson,
Tom Anderson, Grover, sure. So someone has to have you know, it's just like anyone can make an amplifier too, but if they don't, it'll function properly, but it might not sound very good. Fully functioning perfectly, but you know, if they can't hear, if they don't have the vision for what it's supposed to sound like, and that's, you have to have the artistic side of it, basically. You know, it's the artistic side of it. It's like a lot of people can make a song. It doesn't mean it's a good song. Mm. Yeah.
Well, the word you use is a good word, and that is actually finesse.
Yeah.
And it's the finesse that costs the money. Mm-hmm. You can find a factory in China or Vietnam wherever you want to go, and they will be buying really good quality maple. They will be buying alder from America, and all the parts that they've got that go together are exactly the same parts that, you know, Grover would use, John Suhr would use, Fender Custom Shop would use. Then wood management can be good too, but if you spend the time on the finesse, it turns a $300 retail guitar into a $3,000 retail guitar. Mm-hmm. And nobody will pay that money for that finesse, because the first thing they do is look at the headstock and they go, where was this made? And you go, China. And they go, I'm not paying $3,000 for a Chinese guitar. And I can understand it, but that's the frustrating part about it.
And physically, it's exactly the same part.
Yeah. Well,
so the neck is with the same truss rod. It's with the same build. It's the same everything.
I think the first time we met, Dave, we was at NAMM this year, wasn't it? Because I don't think we've met before. And I had the stuff that I'm working with now with the factory in India with Harmony Musical Instruments.
Yeah, fantastic.
And the necks and the bodies. And I mean, the reality, if I hadn't have told you that neck was made in India, you would have sworn it came out of some small custom shop in the US.
Yeah, what I loved about those necks and bodies is they just had the right feel. You instantly put your hand on that neck and you're like, wow, this is like an old Strat. This feels, all the contours are right. Everything about it was right. It was made really well. Everything was fantastic.
And that's just a finesse that we've managed to the factory could always build good necks and good bodies, but I've always said you need to build a guitar from the inside out. You don't just get a Strat, draw around it and go, that's a Strat. You have to understand why the Strat was made the way it was from the inside out, especially with necks. The most important part of a neck to me is the truss rod. That's really where a neck gets its tonality from. So I don't like double truss rods. I don't like heavy truss rods. I like to hear the wood. And the factory can do that. And the finesse and the details. And it took a little while to convince the factory that if we do this, we will be successful. Because generally speaking, a factory's looking at, well, how many necks a day can I make? Because that's how I make my money.
Yeah.
And my whole thing is to change their mindset. It's to not how many necks a day you can make, but how many good necks a day you can make and still make a profit, which everybody has to do.
Mm-hmm.
The response to those necks and bodies and things, and the kits that we've done, which Stu Mac are now selling, was phenomenal. I was really, really pleased. So it can be done, but you have to have the will to do it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. David Gregory has a question for Trev. Can you ask Trev about the VS100C convertible trem?
Right back.
Best trem I've ever had, but Gibson or someone sued him out of making it over a patent issue.
Yeah, this is true. I created this arm assembly, which basically locked a bridge when you weren't using it. So if you dropped the arm, the bridge became a fixed bridge. And when you picked up the arm, it became a fully floating vibrato. So it gave you everything that loads of people have tried to do without even thinking about it. Once it's set up, it's everybody said to me, this is the actual, this is the ultimate, this is the answer. I'd already been granted a US patent on it, and Gibson threw a lawsuit at me to stop me from producing it. And to cut a long story short, it's all about money. It's all about how long can you keep something going? How can you bring somebody to their knees? And we ended up settling, and the settlement was quite simply, I couldn't make it in America, and everything went away. But unfortunately, it literally took that vibrato system, and it was like throwing it in a cupboard and saying to guitar players, you can't have that anymore. And that's basically what happened. But now we can make it. The patents run out for everybody. It's fair game, and we are making it and selling it again.
Oh, good.
So it is going to be available again. Wilkinson Direct on Reverb.
Oh, nice. Good to hear. Cecil Music has a question. Marc, could you ask Trev about his thoughts on the Super V Strat vibratos, which uses a piece of spring steel?
Yep. I see the concept. I have no reason to believe that it won't work. If it's something that you want to try and you like it and it works for you, then I certainly have nothing derogatory or nothing negative to say about it. It's just another way of coming at it. It's just another solution. It's just a different way of doing something. Again, I still come back to this mechanical thing that many years ago when I was in Anaheim, a very well-known name in our industry, Gary Kaler, had a chrome plating shop, and Gary used to do my chrome plating. And at the time, he was producing the Kayla vibratos, which was an English design by a guy called Dave Story, and he was doing very, very well with them. And he then started to work with, I think, a Polish engineer or somebody. He had a great engineer called Dave Petchlet that worked with him on several designs. And he started to work with this guy, and this guy had an idea for a hydraulic vibrato. And Gary thought, oh, this is great, this is fantastic. But we go back to this term finesse, and we go back to this thing about feel. There's something that Leo got right that we have accepted. Whether he got it right or whether we've just accepted it is another discussion. But when you've got a pivoting vibrato system, there is a key dimension to a vibrato system. From the edge of from the knife edge that contacts the screw or the pivot post to the front edge of the block is 1/2 inch. If you start to mess with that, you start to change the feel of the vibrato. And the vibrato has a feel on the arm. And if we take a vibrato and we look at the arm, the way that arm makes that pivot, when you've got the springs and the strings balancing it out, there is a feel to it, and it's subtle. It's something that when it's set up right and you play it, you just go, that is phenomenal. But it can only be set up right if you've got everything in the right place. When it's not in the right place, I'm not saying it's wrong, I'm saying it doesn't feel the same. And there is this subtlety that I believe we can't get past 1954, which we should be able to, but the reality of it is I don't think we can. Leo thought he got past it. It was a big chunk of metal, as you said, Dave. It always looked a bit weird. And he designed it that way because he wanted to be able to make one vibrato that could be left or right-handed. No, this is Leo's mindset.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You know,
I mean, you know.
And you can't fault the man. I mean, when the guy did the Telecaster and he did the Strat, he had 2 stocks on the pin router, 625 thou and 1.5 inches. And he could make a complete body with those 2 depth stops because he wanted to make it fast. We used to have conversations. He used to think Gibson were crazy. Why would you glue a neck in a guitar? Why would you put a 17-degree neck angle on a headstock? Why would you go to all that trouble when I make a guitar out of 1 3/4 inches of alder or swamp ash or pine or whatever, and I make a neck out of 1 inch piece of maple? And the only reason he did that was he went down a lumber yard and said, I want some wood to make a guitar. And they said, well, what kind of wood do you want? He said, well, what kind of wood have you got? And they sort of like, well, we've got maple and we've got cherry wood and we've got alder and blah, blah, blah. And a lot of decisions of what he actually started with were based on price and availability. Uh-huh. And the reason he settled at 1 inch 750, 1 3/4 inch, was the fact that he bought 8/4 stock, and by the time he'd machined it down, that's what he was left with. And so he made everything work around that dimension. And then when he got the neck, he bought 6/4 maple and machined that down and ended up with 1 inch. So then when he said, okay, well, now I've built the neck, and the problem is I haven't got enough down pressure at the nut, so I'm going to scallop it. So he scalloped it, and then he still didn't have enough down pressure on the E and the B string, so he created a string tree to get over that problem. Uh-huh. That was just actually being a productionist. That was not thinking about a guitar as a guitar player, because Leo wasn't a guitar player. He did, however, listen to guitar players all the time. And he would build them something, and they would go away and play it in the club, and they would come back and they would tell him what he liked and what he didn't like and all those things. And that's how all those things came about. So for some reason, he got it so right, and we got so used to it. When you try and go past it, mm-hmm. It doesn't get accepted.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That was his frustration.
Yep. Got a couple more questions left from Uneffin' Believable. Why do many bridges with piezos seem to have issues?
I don't quite know what the issues expletives is asking about. But I think it's an inherent an inherent unreliability in the piezo crystal itself and the way it's mounted. It doesn't like being disturbed. Piezo crystals are really, really finicky things. And until you understand them and work with them and know how critical they can be. You can have an acoustic guitar with an undersaddle piezo crystal in it, and one night it can sound great and work perfectly, and the next night you go to the gig and 2 strings are dead or 2 strings are quieter. And you end up having to just lift the string and reposition it on the saddle, or push the saddle down or do something with it, and it fires it up again, and now it sounds okay again. They are incredibly finicky. So you try and do that in 6 individual saddles on a vibrato bridge with a wiggle stick. That's where you run into problems. I mean, if you look at the original Fishman bridge on the Ken Parker fly guitar, the work that went into those saddles and those actual dog bones, as Larry calls them, where the string runs over, and the actual angle that has to be kept on that bridge. If you start building a bridge with piezos and you allow people to adjust the height of it or the height of the saddles and change the string angle over it, that's a nightmare. Larry's piezo vibrato bridge, he's used my vibrato bridge for many years because he can control the height of those saddles. And he actually designed, and I believe got a patent on a saddle, that the string comes out of the block, sits on the saddle behind the intonation point at the perfect angle to give him the perfect down pressure on the piezo to give him reliability. You allow people to change all that, you're going to run into problems with piezos.
Interesting. Okay, thank you. I think I've gone through all the questions, so I've got one last question. Dave, do you have any other questions that you've run into?
I don't think so.
Okay, I've got Francisco Guardian. He says, I'm a big fan of Trev's VS100 tremolo, but it would be amazing if the string could be locked at the pivot point. Can you please ask him if he has plans to offer retrofit saddles for the VS100?
I would like to do that. I would like to do that. I really, really would. And it's something that the drawings are done, the prototypes are made. It's just a matter of finding a manufacturing partner that would like to do it. What people have to understand is there's some things about making things that are incredibly expensive. I think I was one of the first guys to use powdered metal as a way of making steel parts to get the price point to where people could afford it. If you have to machine steel, it's incredibly time consuming, which makes it incredibly expensive. So the saddles that we use on the VS132P now, the tool was nearly 25 grand. But the 25 grand allows you to make a saddle out of heat treatable steel, which is what they have to be in order to be able to clamp the string and not wear away. The plating process also has to be hard chrome plating, incredibly thin, so that you don't get the plating wearing. They take a lot of making those saddles, because people do say to us, gosh, that bridge is expensive. And you go, well, if I'd have had to machine it, it would have been like $800, not $200. So there's a lot of investment to be made in things like that to get things to a price point that people will look at it and go, yeah, that's value for money. Very, very difficult to do a lot of that stuff. So yeah, I really would love to do that. I think it's, and again, another one of the last pieces in the puzzle. And I got an approval nod there from Dave. So is this what we have to do, Dave, to get it on a Friedman guitar?
I think it would be cool to have one of your bridges on the Friedman guitar.
I think that's going to happen eventually. Depending on how everything pans out here.
Yeah.
I mean, I was absolutely thrilled. Obviously, when John decided to use it on the Pete Thorn model, and then he actually used it on his signature guitar. Mm-hmm. So that kind of tells you that it works.
It works.
Oh yeah.
And it gives you the assurances that I think we're all a little bit doubting of ourselves sometimes. Is that right? Did I make that right decision? Is that good enough? Is that the way I want it to be? But when you get assurances from people like, from people like John, and you get artists like Pete Thorn going out and using it night after night after night, then you go, oh, maybe I got something right.
Yeah, it's working. Working well.
Yeah, you got it right, all right. One last question, because I was curious about this. Ludwig Lazars asked, thoughts on PRS tremolos? Cheers from Sweden.
Yeah. Paul Smith is a very, very clever guy. I have a lot of respect for Paul Smith. I hope he has a little bit of respect for me. He set out to create this guitar, which I have said many, many times, and I truly believe this. I think he created the third classic.
Mm-hmm.
I really, really do. He came at it from a Les Paul Junior double cut and morphed it into a Strat. And he put the two together, and he knew that he had to get that guitar working, and he knew he had to do things with the vibrato that would actually keep the guitar in tune. And again, he took the same tack as Leo. He knew he needed straight string pull at the headstock. He knew he needed locking tuners, and he knew that he had to have a shallow headstock angle. Those things together will really, really help. Then you move down the guitar and you come to the bridge. And then he created 6 screw pivots. The only thing I don't understand about what he did was why he grooved every single one of those screws. Because he still has the bridge sat on the surface of the guitar. And it's very, very difficult to line 6 grooves up on 6 screws that are so small to get perfect return to zero. But when they're set up, they're phenomenal. But when people start messing with screws and doing tweaks and things, then you start to get problems. And I don't think he'll mind me saying this, but initially he started off with what I call a blob of brass bronze. And it literally was a blob of brass bronze, because I actually made his vibratos for him for a very short time in Anaheim, and I created them from this blob. And what he actually did was, he's changed it completely now. He's gone to a 2-piece construction with steel and all those kind of things. But this thing was brass bronze, so it was like a friction material, but it was quite soft. And this shape looked like it was sandcast, and it was incredibly crude. It was just a blob of this material that nearly looked like a vibrato bridge. And what you had to do is you had to take this and you had to put it on a CNC machine, and you had to first face somewhere to create a reference point. Then you had to create a shape to hold it, and then you had to CNC machine the rest of the stuff off it, because somewhere in there was a bridge, but you had to find it with a CNC cutter.
Oh, wow.
And then all that after that was refining it. But it was a great concept. And later on, as he does now, he has changed it to a steel top plate that is fastened to a sustain block with 3 screws in it, going back to the old Fender way. But he started off with this brass blob, and it was incredible, actually. I had a wonderful programmer who worked with me, who actually managed to figure out how you made a PRS bridge out of this blob of brass bronze.
Wow. Crazy.
But he did something, I think he did something incredible, and he's going from strength to strength. And I have to say that I think the John Mayer guitar, the Silver Sky, is just incredible.
Yeah, it's
the way he's done it.
It's a very cool guitar. It sounds great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really sounds great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although he won't make a lefty, I asked him at Gearfest, and he told me hell no.
He's got so much going on at the moment, that the company's growing at a phenomenal rate.
Yeah.
And it's great to see. Yep. It's great to see.
It is. Really is. It's awesome. Well, I've run through all the questions, Trev. I really appreciate you taking all the time that you have today to be on the show.
Enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Enjoyed it.
Guys, make sure you check out Wilkinson Direct on reverb.com. You can get all your Wilkinson parts there. And Trev, is there a way that people can reach out to you if they want to contact you for anything?
Yeah, they can get us on Instagram at Wilkinson Direct Instagram. They'll get through to the lovely Kate, and she will get them whatever answer they want, or if they want to talk to me, she will give them contact numbers. And I always have open door policy. I pick up the phone. I will talk to anybody. That's the key to the company, is communication with your customer.
Absolutely.
Yep.
That's a good motto.
Yep. Dave does the same thing.
I try.
Yep. Well, it's awesome. Everybody, I hope you stay safe, stay healthy. All your families, everybody. You have a great rest of the weekend. Our next guest is Ryan Bruce Fluff, and he's coming on April 17th. And then the following guest after that is Brett Papa. He'll be coming on. I think that's May 1st. So I'll just check us out. Make sure you hit the bell and subscribe to the channel. Go to sweetwater.com also, guys. And we will talk to you soon. Trev, have a great evening. Hank?
Thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate it. And you guys stay safe and well.
You too.
All right, you too.
You too. Hang on.
Thanks for the opportunity. Really nice talking to you and everybody online.
Awesome.
Yes, thank you. Everybody have a great weekend. And again, stay safe.
There you go. Take care. Bye.